Hi, and welcome to On the Couch Conversations with Brenda Porter. I'm so glad that you are here with us today. Please take the time to like us, comment below, subscribe. You're in for a treat today. Today's guest is Spencer G. Stevens. He's an Atlanta area award-winning actor, singer, puppeteer, composer, and educator. He has performed for many of the theaters here in the metro Atlanta area, including for the 2012 Susie winning production of Avenue Q at the Horizon Theater. He's a resident puppeteer at the Center for Puppetry Arts, where he has performed and directed since 2003. Having worked in theater and education for over 15 years, Spencer is currently the middle school theater director and instructor at Mount Vernon School. As a composer, Spencer and his writing partner, Robin, have won the National Children's Theater Festival in 2008 with their original musical, Paint. Welcome, Spencer.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you.
So, there's so many things I can speak with you about. I guess I'm going to talk to your uniqueness of being a puppeteer first.
Okay.
Because there are not a lot of puppeteers in the Atlanta area, not very many Black male puppeteers. So
Sure.
talk to me a little bit about your puppeteering. What brought you to it? How do you use it in your other life? And just talk to me about it.
Okay. When I got to Atlanta back in August of '99, I was working a corporate job and everything. Then I started doing some theater, like community theater, a little later on after I'd been here for a while. And, kind of had some fun doing some community shows after work, after my day job. And then I went and auditioned for Weather Rocks at the Center for Puppetry Arts because they were looking for an African-American actor, actress that could sing and act, and you didn't have to have puppetry experience. Because with that show, it's a style of puppetry that's called overt. So you actually see the puppeteer while you're while they're manipulating the puppets. And so we had these characters of being weathercasters as well as kind of interacting with the puppets because it was a whole kind of like a rock concert about weather. And different styles of music, but they wanted someone African American that could sing and act and dance a little bit. And I went and auditioned, and I got the part. And I was like, okay, cool. So, and I got that, and then I got another show with a different theater at the same time. So I was doing a theater for young audience production of Free to Be You and Me. So I got these two big gigs, and at the center, it's a full-time job for the run of a show. So for about a month, you rehearse 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. You get Mondays off. And then once the show opens, then you do about 13 performances, which will all be like from in the morning until noon. And so you do like 2 shows Tuesday through Friday, 3 shows on Saturday, 2 shows on Sunday. So you do 13 shows that week. So by the afternoon, you're done. You're done by about 12:30. So the rest of the day is yours. But it's a 45 to 50-minute show, and it's like nonstop puppetry, singing, everything. And so you do 2 of those a day. That's kind of exhausting. But I knew that once I got cast in the show and I had that rehearsal schedule, I was going to have to quit my day job. And that was one of the reasons for me moving to Atlanta to begin with, is to see if I could actually make it in a different city, if I actually had talent. Because I'd done theater in North Carolina, where I'm from, and I was living in the Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill area, because that's where I went to college. And I was doing shows in that area and doing really well and getting some good reviews and a good name for myself. And I'm like, but am I really any good? So I moved to Atlanta to try it. And so after doing community theater, I ended up at the Center for Puppetry Arts, and I got cast in this show. And it was great. Just interacting with the puppets, and it was on it's a scale of puppetry I had no idea even existed. One, didn't realize puppetry could be a job, a full-time gig. As a performer, all the skills required to actually do a puppet show, especially at the Center for Puppetry Arts, because they require, a lot of skill set. And it's a great ensemble piece because there are 5 puppeteers telling this whole story, but you all have to work together, and everything that happens on stage outside of the lights and maybe some of the sound is done by the puppeteer. So if it moves on stage, a puppeteer moved it. If it's a puppet, a puppeteer touched it. If it's a big set piece, a puppeteer did it. Some of the sound effects we actually do live because we have microphones on headbands or kind of put in our hair, which I don't have any, or on our costume, so that they can pick up your sound. And so it's live singing, live acting. You know, it's all in the moment. So it was interesting, different, difficult, but really awesome. And because my role didn't really require me to do a lot of puppetry, as we were going along in rehearsals, I talked to John Ludwig, the artistic director of the Center for Puppetry Arts and the director of the show. And I said, there was this one character of a penguin that was in this kind of Luther Vandross R&B styled song about snow. So there's this crooning snowman that's singing all this stuff, and there's this penguin that's there kind of like being his backup and telling out, telling some of the other information about how snow happens. And I asked if I could actually try to do the penguin. And it's a hand and rod puppet. So one of the more difficult styles of puppetry. So you got your hand here, you're holding these rods. And so they let me try it out. And so I got to play that part. So that was me getting even more puppetry just in that particular show. So I asked John again, I said, do you guys teach classes? Because I was really getting into this and I'm having like this childhood flood of memories from being in front of the TV when I was a kid, when my grandmother would put me in front of the TV to watch Sesame Street, loving the Muppet Show and all the characters and never realizing I had a connection to puppetry and that I really enjoyed watching it and didn't realize that I could actually do it. So I asked John, I said, do you guys teach lessons, puppetry lessons? And there wasn't a formal program. So John said, well, you know what, after the show on Wednesdays, I can work with you for about an hour and just show you some of the, things about puppetry and show you more puppetry. So the amazing part of this is I got free 1 hour puppetry lessons every week on a Wednesday during the run of the show from John Ludwig, one of the most amazing puppeteers, puppet show creators, just brilliant creative minds in the puppetry industry. And I think of it now and it's just like, that was incredible. Because
I know my mouth is still open.
I know. And so he taught me just all of these puppet fundamentals. And at that time, I think, and I'm not sure if the schedule's still the same. So when you did a show at the center, it was about a 3.5 month gig because it's a month of rehearsals. And no, almost 4.5, because I think then it was a month of rehearsals and about 3.5 months of a show. So think about 3.5 months of puppet lessons from John Ludwig for free for an hour on Wednesdays.
That is amazing.
Yes. And then after that, after the show closed, he called me in to audition for another show, cast me in another show. And then pretty much I started being in several of the shows at the center and becoming a puppeteer. That is my story. That's how I kind of fell into puppetry. And being one of the few African-American puppeteers in the Metro Atlanta area, and definitely one of the few Black males. Because honestly, I think we only have there's one African-American female puppeteer at the center right now.
Now I know Akbar Imhotep came through the center.
Now he was the first African-American puppeteer at the center. I recently found that out.
I know you teach. So do you use puppetry in your teaching?
Actually, I do. My previous teaching job that I just left in July, I was there for about 15 years. And one of the things we did was we did these plays with our 3rd grade classes. So there were 3 3rd grade classes of about like 18 to 20 kids each. And we would custom write them a show that they would perform. And prior to me getting there, and like for the first couple of years I was there, they were more Native American story based. So they were these, we called them potlatch plays that they actually acted in. And then when they stopped doing that unit in the 3rd grade, the drama teacher and I kind of came up with the idea of doing puppet shows. And so what we would do is do the same kind of idea, custom write a show where the kids actually got lines. And so they got to have these individual lines, and we made sure everybody had at least a line or 2 in the class, and we cast it, do some fair casting where people just pulled a character out of a hat. And that's the character you're going to be. But the difference is they would actually do it overt style. Like I said, you would see them and they would have a puppet in their hand. And before we even started rehearsing on each one of the shows, I would do a puppetry unit and just pretty much explain to them what puppetry is, the different types of puppetry, and then we get into lip sync and just kind of basic puppet movement. So they had a little bit of a language to work with before we started actually working on the play. And then once we started working, and we're talking about 3 different plays. So one for each, an individual play for each class. And so, yeah, and I started teaching puppetry on that level. And then we also incorporated some puppetry in our like spring musical. In a couple of shows, I would coach puppeteers. We decide, oh, let's add some puppetry to this to help tell this part of the story. So, yeah, it does show up in my teaching. And actually, I am now the middle school theater director at a new school I just started in July. And one of the things we've actually just started in this kind of rotation of classes is a puppetry unit for my 7th grade. And I'm going to start introducing a little puppetry in 6th and 8th grade. I've done some basic stuff, but yeah, puppetry will follow me for the rest of my life. And especially as long as I teach, I will use it as a method of storytelling for kids to kind of understand a way to tell stories. And it's really fun and it's very tactile. So it's something that they can really just immediately jump into and do. You know.
Now, are you teaching virtually or teaching in person?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
We are hybrid teaching. We've actually been hybrid teaching since the school year started.
Okay.
And the school actually phased in kids slowly in the beginning of the school year. So we didn't have like the whole group of kids. We kind of kept the number small. The whole school has been kind of retrofitted so we can space out for this year because it's not how they normally would have done it. And there's some kids that are like virtual for the whole school year, or they were virtual for the first semester. So yeah, and that's been the challenges now, teaching performing arts, a class where you actually have to perform, and doing it virtually and with kids in class as well, and like doing improv with kids virtually and in class. And I've managed to make it happen on a couple of different projects where even though they're on the screen and they're kids in the class, they're all engaged in doing something. And it does take reframing how we think about theater and how we think about teaching theater, because it is, you, like you said, you can't touch them, you can't be in the same room with them, but you have to engage with them, and we're engaging now, so you can engage with them. It's just creating projects and lessons that they can actually do most of the work at home, but while still getting feedback from you. So there's a way to do it. And actually, when at my old school last year, when COVID hit and we went into lockdown, that puppet show I told you about always usually happened around March, April. So it was March, April. It's like, we're not in person. How are we going to make this happen? And I told the lead drama teacher, I said, I'll handle it. I'll figure this out. And I ended up creating, and I think I had way too much fun doing this. I created kind of like a puppet TV series or a puppet video series where I had a puppet and I created this character. Me and the puppet would talk, and we talk about different aspects of puppetry. And like, I did break it down into like, we're going to talk about hand puppets. Then the next episode, we'll talk about hand and rod puppets. And I started coming up with these bizarre characters. They're interacting with me. I'm doing all this editing of the video so we could have it up and ready for a new one each week for the kids during April. Yeah. And so I'm coming up with like, how am I going to teach them this in kind of a virtual world? So I ended up with this show. So not even planning it. And I was having a lot of fun. I realized after watching it and doing it, I was stressing myself out, but it was the good stress, because I was stressing myself out. How can I make this fun and funny? How can I engage the kids? And then I had a parent email me and tell me that her 2 kids, one who happened to be in the 3rd grade and the other who was in the 5th grade, they were both loving it and dying laughing when they were watching the episodes. And
so you also compose music.
Yes.
Are you using your music in your teaching and such?
My own compositions, not as much, because most of the things I've written over the past, several years were for a specific play or specific project. I wrote like a couple of songs for some little short plays they did at the Imagine It Children's Museum
Mm-hmm.
several years ago. And then I have a musical that I've written with my writing partner, Robin Seidman, called Paint. And it's about Marc Chagall at the age of 7 deciding that he wanted to be a painter, because that's when it happened. And so it's just, his parents wanting him to be more connected. His dad wants him to be a fishmonger. His mom says you should be check out photography, but he really wants to paint. And it's this kind of fanciful look at his life and him trying to make that decision to buck, Jewish tradition and go into this thing that he really is passionate about. So I wrote the music. She wrote all the lyrics and the script, and so I wrote the music for that. And we're actually in the process of trying to retool it a little bit to present it in another format. But it won an award. I haven't written anything recently, but I think I'm supposed to be writing some stuff. I can feel it now. I need to get back to it. But what I do with my kids when I teach, I music direct more than anything, and I do that a lot because the first show we did at my new school, I did a movie version of Charlie Brown, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and I music directed the kids, and we recorded them in the studio so they could sing safely in the studio. And so when we shot it on campus, they weren't actually singing out loud, so it was so they could take their masks off and we could shoot it, keep them distant. So that was my first show out of the gate at a new school. So
Wow. Now, what's your style of composition? I mean, do you do everything? Do you R&B, country, reggae?
I love so many different styles of music. Yes, I could probably do them all once I do some research, because it was a kind of interesting when they at the Miracle Theater in Florida, when they found out, they got this play about this Jewish character and this, very Jewish influenced show. And then they saw my picture as the composer. They're like, what is this Black dude doing composing klezmer music? And that was my inspiration. I did some research, and I heard some klezmer music. So I did some research, and it was a combination of musical theater and klezmer. So it has kind of a klezmer musical theater hybrid sound. And I just resonate with music. Will my natural default be R&B? Of course, because that's what I grew up. R&B and gospel is what I grew up with. But I would probably write in just any kind of style that would serve what I'm writing. Even if it's just a song, just to be sung, or if it's part of a theatrical piece, whatever's going on in the show, I want to serve that. And usually when I write for young audiences, if it's not a specific genre, I kind of play around with genres. I just play around with styles. Back when I was growing up and I was writing songs, it was just for the fun of it and me just kind of experimenting with playing and seeing what I could create. And at one point I thought I was going to be a music producer and a songwriter. So that's kind of how I started in life. But as I've progressed, it's more of doing it for a need or for a purpose, for a specific project. And I don't just write songs like I did when I was, because it's time. when you're in middle and high school, you got all the time in the world to write. You do your homework. It's like, what am I going to do now? Oh, I'll write a song. I'll play around and see what I can come up with. Nowadays, it's like, write a song just for fun. Who's got time for that?
So are you more of an actor, a puppeteer, a director, a teacher, or a composer?
Yes.
Yes.
Because they all manifest in different ways at different times. And I think that's actually one of the reasons. I guess teacher would be at the top of the list right now, because I love teaching and I love working with kids. And now that I actually have my own class that I'm the drama teacher, I come in with the lessons, and I come in with the projects. It's a combination of being a director, actor, teacher, because you do all of those skills are popping out while you're trying to help other kids kind of find their center, their creative center, and create these projects. So that's why I say yes, because they all come into play.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess you could say right now I'm teacher, and I'm one of those people that it will evolve over a day. It will evolve over a week, just depending on where my brain is and what I'm working on.
Makes a lot of sense, because we are wherever we are at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Who we are, where we are at that moment. When I met you, you were actor, singer,
That was at Georgia Perimeter, now the Clarkston campus and I was just talking to somebody about that, the Colored Museum.
Yes. Yes. That was so much fun.
It was great. And I'd been dying to do that show for years because I saw it in college. Because I went to an HBCU in Durham, North Carolina, and they did a production of it. And when I saw it, I was mesmerized. I was like, wow, this is us. This is our stories. This is incredible. And so when I saw that they were auditioning for it, I was like, let me jump on this. And so now I'm working on a project at TAG.
Ah,
I'm music directing and working on like a little cabaret for a kind of a virtual Harlem Renaissance experience that we're
cool.
putting together and that the students are kind of devising. So
Well, that's fun.
yeah,
Yeah. And when do you have time to do all of that?
I don't know.
What? What? You're
Well,
teaching and you're
and I've always been the kind of person that, I'm always doing stuff. I have to get better at saying no. And I have to get better at also going, yes, that's an amazing project. I just can't do it right now. Because usually it's someone will approach me and someone will say, oh my God, that sounds incredible. I want to be a part of this. And it's like, oh, I only got a day. So, trying to figure out how to make it all work. But this one's actually pretty cool. We've been working on it. We started in January, I think, maybe. And we did like a little preview. We wanted to put together a preview in February. Did this short preview where, and it's an all-female cast, and I helped them with some solos, and they did some solos just to kind of get a feel for what it's going to be. And so now we're crafting the entire show, which will be April 16th, 17th, and 18th. And audiences will be able to go online and watch it and go to these different rooms and see these characters interact, but they will be live on campus. A lot of this stuff is new for them. So like devised theater, the whole thing, and explaining to them this concept that we have, and it's everybody's so used to a linear story in a very in a printed script, so it's formal, that kind of thing, and it's not that. So I had the epiphany last night. I said, think of it like the game The Sims. So you're playing this video game and you create these people and they're just kind of living. Well, think about it. It's like The Sims, but in a couple of different rooms, and the audience is virtual and they get to watch these different things happen. That's what's been fun about teaching now, because the kids have a totally different frame of reference than the one I had when I was a kid. And just trying to connect to them on this social media, electronic level, but still keeping it very personal, and being with people and engaging with people and communicating with people, and developing some empathy, but still being able to talk to them, explaining, okay, so that TikTok video you saw yesterday and you saw the guy doing this, so trying to find the language. It's interesting. But fun.
So what haven't you done that you'd like to do?
This is a really good question. I haven't, well, I want to travel more. But because I was blessed to go to Australia last year. Here's the crazy part. We went the last week of February, the first week of March of 2020. We got back March 7th. I was at school for a week, and then we went into lockdown. So we barely got that trip in.
Wow.
And it was incredible. And I tell everybody needs to go to Australia. You just need to go at least 2 weeks. It was amazing. So I definitely would like to travel more, but career-wise, I think I want to do more. I want to help tell more stories and help people create new content, so we're not just rehashing the same old things. And it's, the world is changing right now, and it's changing in a great way where people are a lot more open to telling their stories and telling new stories. And I want to help kind of facilitate that. I want to be part of that process. And I want to do more voiceover work, because I've done a little before, and I want to do a lot more, because it's just fun. I like making, voicing characters and doing that kind of thing. Perform some more? Yeah, but I'm going to be very specific about what shows I do, because I've done a lot of great stuff. And there are a couple that I wouldn't mind tackling again. Like I definitely want to do Driving Miss Daisy again. I've done it twice, nowhere near the age of the character. So I want to be, now that I'm getting closer to the age of the character, I would like to do it one more time when I'm closer to the character's age. Oh, it's an amazing play. It's just, you know, just so much in such short scenes, and the script is not long, it's not dense, but it's just jam packed. Every word in there is in there for a reason. You take out a line, it's going to change the whole context of everything. There's nothing in there that's unnecessary. Yeah, and I guess like direct more. Yeah, so yeah, do all the things. That's what that's what I want to do, all the things as long as I can keep doing all the things. Well, I do have this ultimate dream of being the associate artistic director at the Center for Puppetry Arts, focused on uh, teen and adult theater. I know that's super specific.
That would be really cool.
Well, I think it was a dream I had, just several years ago. And I know it's an arts organization, and so funding is always an issue. And there, that role is not really there right now, but it was just something I always, because I love that place so much, and I love the innovation, I love the creativity, I love everything about the process of creating a puppet show, and really championing doing more for shows that are more specifically geared toward teens and adults, that can help talk about some of these difficult issues, because puppetry is such a great, I think, a great way to tell a story, making it the comfort level a little better, because you're dealing with these objects that are telling the story, and less about this person. Because when you do it through an object, there's a whole different kind of connection, and you can almost see the humanity in the object if it's done right. And I think you start to open your mind up to possibilities when you're looking at these inanimate objects actually telling the story. Whether it be in the form of a puppet in the form of a person, or it's a puppet in the form of just an object that represents something. I just think there's so many possibilities, and I would love to tell more teen and adult stories like that, because I've seen some incredible ones, and I'm like, oh yeah, we need to be doing that at the center.
So it doesn't seem like, I mean, a lot of people, the pandemic hit and a lot of people lost their jobs, stopped working, went home, couldn't figure out what to do. But it doesn't sound like you skipped a beat.
No, I got a new job in the process. I was not looking, and come July, we're wrapping up. We had wrapped up the school year, did a couple of video presentations for our kids that had graduated, and so we're like, okay, so now we're in the summer trying to deal. How are we going to go back to school? So those are all the conversations that were happening. Are we going to be able to go back to school? The state of Georgia was in a weird place of how, yes, teachers need to go back. Are they going to be safe? We don't know, that whole thing. I've been working in private schools, my old job and my new job. So they have different rules that they can follow when it comes to opening up, because it's really on them. And where I am now, they already had a plan in place to make sure things were cleaned on a regular basis. They upgraded, ventilation systems. They did all of this stuff to make it work. Now, the funny thing is, in July, I get a call from, I was working, because I do a lot of summer camps with Georgia Ensemble in Roswell. And my friend Laurel Farley Crow, I can't even say her name, Laurel Farley Crow, she is the education director. And I've been working with her for years. And she was just kind of like at a loss of what you do for summer camps, once summer hit and school was out. So there were several virtual camps that happened. But in July, following CDC guidelines, we actually did 2 live summer camps, and we had a whole protocol laid out, how the kids were, where we put the kids, made sure things were sanitized, where they would have lunch outside. We keep, and we had a whole set of protocols, and thank the baby Jesus, we made it through 3 weeks of camp without a problem. The kids did live shows in masks, and it worked, and it was totally fine. And we got creative in how we did some of the staging and the costuming. The costumer did a great job, because we were doing Lion King Jr. for our performance camp, and it's a 2-week camp. She had the crew make masks for all the kids that had their animal character fabric painted on their masks, so that it was the mouth of their character. And they each had a different mask for each one of the performances, so they didn't even have to repeat masks because washing them would have been an issue with the paint. I mean, you just got everybody got super creative and just made it work. And so after that, I was like, you know what? I think I'll be fine going into school. Then the job popped up, and boom, I'm starting a new job in July during a pandemic. So it's been crazy.
So with that and the other projects you're working on, you don't really have time to do anything. It's a good thing that theaters are kind of closed down.
Yeah, for the most part, I'm pretty busy, but I could always find room to do something else, depending. And I have to say, I think Atlanta theater has actually been keeping stuff going. There's a lot of virtual content or a lot of, live outdoor content where, they're performing outdoors and the
Mhm.
audience is outside distance. More so than New York, because New York has just been, you think Broadway and you think of those houses. And I was just listening to it on the radio. They were talking about like Phantom, because there's so much involved in Phantom with sets and costumes and people. How do you keep all of that safe, and how do you keep everything clean in a run of a show? Not just limiting the audience, but how do you do all of that on stage with that massive amount of people?
Right.
So it's like, I feel like here in Atlanta, we've actually started figuring out some stuff and doing it pretty well, doing small cast shows where there is no audience, but you stream it, or there is a small distanced audience. It's not full packed houses. I'm like, we we had a bump, and then people are starting to do stuff. This talent that we have, we're creators, and everybody's a creator. We're all a creator. We all have creative ideas, but how we in the theater, it's like our passion to just constantly create things. And this has been a challenging time, but I think a lot of people are actually they're up for the challenge and are starting to really think, okay, we've got Zoom, we've got this, we got a video company here, we got some people that know how to edit. How can we take all these pieces and make it work?
I think Atlanta's been very good about that. And I think it's going to put us in the forefront going forward. I mean, we're already kind of there with film, you know,
Exactly.
and we are, you think we're headed there with theater. So I'm very excited about what this pandemic has done for us, and with all the negative things. I think there's lots of positives that can come
Mhm.
out.
And now we got all these new pandemic stories that people can write.
And they will. I think Atlanta should be challenged. We should challenge ourselves to do a year of pandemic stories.
That would actually be, because there's so many of them, and everybody has so many different things that have happened. And like I said, like my story is, it's been pretty positive. And that's why I kind of keep my mouth shut a little bit, because there are people like just having a hard time. And I understand it, just being distanced from people and not actually having, physical interaction, but I'm looking at my story and I'm like, I'm actually okay.
So, what haven't we talked about that you'd like to talk about?
Hmm, what haven't we talked about? Well, I mean, we haven't done a lot of like BIPOC talk about, theater, but I almost feel like there's been a lot of talk, and I've been involved in several of those talks. Um, and I feel like now we got to start coming up with action steps and solutions of what's gonna happen. Um, because just even talking to, people at the Puppet Center, I've come up with some ideas for, just a way to, get more African American visibility there, as well as, we need to have visibility of all the marginalized cultures and people, because this whole thing about the Asian American hate, especially with older people right now, and just the older Asian Americans, it's horrible. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And it's just made it even more aware to me that, I mean, how many of those stories have we been telling in Atlanta theater? It's not just Black. There's so many stories that have not been told, and we've got so many theaters in town and so many opportunities to tell these stories from several different perspectives. And now we really need to start actively looking for those, and that's the leadership of the theaters, for one. And it is kind of sad that in Atlanta you only have, technically you have what, two or three Black theaters in town that focus on telling Black stories. And I think I might be generous by saying 3, because I know you have yours and True Colors. Is there anybody, like any other theater that I'm missing that's doing, that is a Black run theater that's telling Black stories?
Well, there actually are. In this process, I've learned that there are more and more, and there are producers, not necessarily maybe people that have a theater season, but you've got True Colors, you have Impact, New African Grove Theater. Theater in the Square is not African American owned, but they do a
True, but and you're right. I've seen a couple of shows there, and they've been
yeah, they
really
do a
good
lot of
shows.
American. Then there's the Tiny Theater. They stayed open during the pandemic. We have the festival, and then we have Chai Ife, who does her productions,
Mhm.
Dominion Arts with Robert Connor. So
Yes,
there's really a lot of, but everybody we talk about.
we talk about the big ones that
True Colors. That's what we talk about.
yeah.
Um,
And so I think maybe then it's more, because I was talking about this with someone yesterday. It's the marketing machine, because I always feel like theater marketing is never really great anywhere, and a lot of it is, are we are we being innovative in how we market a show? Are we going to those communities that really that show is about, or that show is trying to speak to? Do we go to that community and say, hey, by the way, here's this show, here's a way for you to come and see it, especially offering like discount tickets or like even free tickets if it's supposed to help them? Because if theater is supposed to be there to tell stories and to move people, and honestly, when you think about like African American protest theater and stuff like that, that's meant to as a call to action, then we have to make the theater actionable, if that makes sense. Just we know what we want it to do, then let's actually make it do it. And then it's sitting down and figuring out, how do you make that happen? Because I think the old way of us doing everything, and this is why I'm loving this whole reckoning and this whole kind of shaking up everything, going, okay, these are the problems that we had in the past, and we've seen it. I mean, you and I both have seen them. We've been in those theaters, we've been in those rooms where we heard the dialogue between people that shouldn't have been happening, and just the tension and all of that negative energy. And it's like, okay, we need to do better on all of that. Let's do better on the whole like process of making and distributing theater. How do we do it better to get it to more people and get it to the people that really need it? Because we've all been to a show where we go and sit there and we see this show and we are just washed over in emotion, because it was the most amazing thing. It connected to your heart, and it gave you a new perspective on something that you weren't even thinking that you needed a perspective on. And you just come out of there going, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing. Everybody needs to see it, but everybody's not seeing it.
that's so true.
And the question is, why? And how do we get everybody to see it?
That's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I know, none of us do.
It's like when you're in New York, everybody wants to go see Broadway, maybe
Mhm.
off Broadway, but Broadway and off Broadway, the off and off, it gets lost. And there's lots of little things that are happening.
Well, and it's so ingrained in the New York culture to go see a show, and because it's part of being a New Yorker. You go see a show.
Right.
It's just part of who you are. And we I don't feel like we've kind of gotten there yet here in Atlanta, because the theater is it is so kind of, I, I don't even know the word to say that. It's not the prominent form of entertainment. It's a great form of entertainment, and people know about it, but it's not the first thing that people think about when they think about, let's go out. What are we going to go do? Let's go see a show. Well, we don't we don't really say that here.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. And I feel like that's where all of this change is happening, and we can start really making theater for the people.
Mhm.
Because if you think about the community, you know, everybody wants to go see themselves on stage. They want to go see their stories. And you need to see other stories as well. But at the core, everybody wants to see their stories. And I think it's part of helping them understand life better, or help, but you connect when you immediately see somebody on the stage like you. And how do we get more of that, and how do we get more diverse casting, and how do we get, these stories that can resonate through all cultures with a cast of all cultures, and everybody, all these cultures are in this theater watching the show going, that's my story. And it hits everybody. Now, how we make that happen, I have no idea.
But I think you're right. I think we've done a lot of talking, and we do have to figure out what our action steps are. Because
Mhm.
I mean, we're in therapy. We're in
Yeah.
therapy. Yeah, and when you go to therapy, you spend a lot of time just talking about your problems first.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then you go, okay, the therapist goes, okay, we've talked about this enough. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
How are you going to handle that? How do you want to change that? What steps can you make so that you're not in the same place and feeling the same way?
Mhm.
And so,
And and we've been in a year of therapy now. So it's officially a year of lockdown. So we've been in a year of therapy. I think one of the toughest parts is breaking away from what everyone is so used to about theater. Because I think the the way we do theater has to change. Like there's something about it that needs to change for us to move to the next level. What that specifically is, I don't quite know, but I feel like, there are a couple of little things that I'm like, yeah, we don't need to do this anymore. We can do this a lot more efficiently, definitely respecting everyone's time, and really going in there with everyone focused on the product and focused on what is the story we're going to tell and how we're going to effectively tell this story, and welcoming all the voices. I mean, that's something that can immediately happen, in any rehearsal hall, and just start with that frame of mind, and always tell everyone you have a voice when we are not on the path of telling a unified story together, and you feel like we're deviating, you raise your hand and you say we're off our path. We are not doing what we're set out to do. And then everybody can go, all right, so we need to refocus on what we're supposed to be doing. And then I think you're able to get away from all of that negativity and that tangential stuff that happens. And it's really, we're going to tell this story, and we're going to tell this story the best way we know how, as this group of people in this room. How are we telling this story?
yeah.
And who are we telling the story to? And why are we telling the story? I count all my shows a blessing, because I think in every show I've done in my life, I've met people that I've learned from, because I kind of go into every project going, I know I'm not the expert, and I'll come in with my set of skills and knowledge, but I am hoping to learn from everybody in this room. I'm hoping to learn something from all of you, because everybody has something to offer. And, from the simple thing of learning how to really nail a piece of choreography, to just learning how to talk to someone with kindness. When you
Yes.
see people do that, you go, I want to be like you, because you said that in the sweetest way, and you got your point. And I'm like, these are the things that I look to learn from people when I'm in a show.
But you're unique in that way. Not everybody goes into the show that way. Not, you know,
True.
you
Well,
know.
well, I suffer from a high level of imposter syndrome because I was not a theater major, so my degrees aren't in theater. But I was in the theater department in college a lot. For like my first 2.5 years of school, people thought I was a theater major because I was constantly in the theater department, even though I was a business major. So I always feel like I'm an imposter in the room, so I need to learn from everybody else to make sure I can keep the ruse up, to make sure it's,
Well, it has worked for you.
it actually has.
So, what advice would you give Atlanta actors, Atlanta creatives, going forward? What's the Spencer G. Stevens advice?
Before you walk into the room, let go of your ego and embrace love. Because when you do anything with love, there's always a positive outcome. You may not get cast in a show, but if you go in there and you do it with the love of just performing and just being in the room, your blessing will come in a different form if you don't get cast in that show. Because maybe you're not supposed to be in that show. Maybe you're supposed to be in the next show that director does, and they call you later on down the line. My best auditions have always been when I went in there prepared, but I went in there and said, I'm just going to have fun, and I'm just going to just be, a ball of love and just enjoy the moment. And to drop the ego and just go start with love. Gotta start with love.
Well,
Your talent and your skill and your ability will automatically shine through because it's part of who you are. And if it's really, really good, you don't even have to push it out there. You don't have to tell anybody you got it. It just happens. So you don't need to come in there with, I'm blah, 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 and I've directed this, and I've been to this, and you don't got. When you open your mouth and you start working with people, it will automatically happen. So just go in there with love. It's like, hello, I am this person. I am thrilled to be in this room with you.
what great advice.
That's my philosophy.
Fabulous advice. And it's a great piece of advice to end our conversation. I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation with Spencer Stevens here today. If you have, don't forget to like us, comment below, and subscribe. Meanwhile, just keep the conversations going. Thank you so much, Spencer.